Oh, just wait for her position. Hey, what's up, Misha? What?
Can I have your video? I want to help, man.
No.
Bye, man.
Colleagues, students, I'd like to introduce all of these remarkably. Thank you so much for coming out. Issues, the crisis happening now. I'd like to introduce all of those
some difficulty putting my glasses on there because don't play cricket at too advanced an age is the best I want to give you. Thank you so much for coming along this evening. Particular welcome to Our Lady there at Bren, to Rajah Haddad, the First Secretary of Lebanese Embassy, I'm grateful, to Bishop John Sherrington, a great friend of the school, to my button, the leader of the Bren Council, councillors I know, I had a lovely conversation with one already this evening, other head teachers, friends from the diocese, friends from Caritas, representatives of the Syrian summer camp, which is always hosted in the school, parents, students. I understand we have some ex-Newman Catholic College students watching us from Manchester, now at Manchester University, so hello to them, and obviously people watching from Beirut as well. So what a wonderful event. The Constantian Charitable Trust, it's a privilege for this institution to be part of it. We're in possibly the richest city in the world, one of the richest cities in the world. For those of you that don't know Harlesden, we're not in the most affluent part of London though. And sometimes myself and Danny, or public wealth maybe could come this school tonight. I do want to reassure you that the capacity for this school, its students, its staff to reach out to the community, both in London, both beyond, across the Mediterranean in this case, is phenomenal. It's been manifest in so many ways since I've been involved in the school, and it's been humbling to see the fact that the school should host and provide a summer camp for Syrian refugees for the last 7 to 8 years. This school did a phenomenal effort during the pandemic in terms of distribution of food boxes and running of food banks. This school was, by the Citizens UK, a top campaigning organisation right across the country, made School of the Year for its engagement with community improvement and its engagement with issues of social justice. That this school actually housed a primary school for a term and a half, 6 years, that was started by fire. We actually built the primary school temporarily on these premises. So this is a school with a massive heart, and I would want our friends in Beirut to know, and our friends from Caritas to know that this commitment to the project is part of our story, part of our identity, it's part of our values. And I would want to just generally reflect that it reflects the universality, excuse me, of the Catholic Church as well. That we should reach out to students, and fellow teachers, and fellow educational leaders in Beirut, a part of the world whose challenges are so formidable compared to what we face. It seems to me it's reflecting some of the obligations of our faith to do so, and it reflects the generosity of our common humanity to do so. So what a great thing to be involved in. So thank you for coming along. Danny knows much more than I do about the detail of the project, and you're going to be seeing some film and the rest of it. So I'd like to invite Danny up now. Thank you for listening.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Danny Coyle. I'm head teacher at the school, and I've worked in London as a teacher in one form or another since 1988. I am that old. It's a pleasure to work in this school. Teachers who work in this school make a difference to the children that they teach every single day. And that's why it's such a pleasure to be involved with the Constantian Charitable Trust, seeking to support those in other parts of the world. And trying to do what we do here in London, in Newman, in our primary schools, in our secondary schools, to a greater extent in different parts of the world. Let me give you some more detail. I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes now about the trust, the aim, the objectives of the trust. With Father Michel Aboud a couple of weeks ago, with myself and another trustee member. That video, I think, is very powerful in giving a real insight and perspective into the lives of people in Beirut today. Catholic, Christian, Muslim, children, the suffering that is going on. And it gives inspiration, I hope, to all of us to try to do something to support those children. You'll see that in a moment. And then my colleague Christoph from the Trust will speak to you about money. And then there's some really nice food, some Lebanese food which has been donated to us by a wonderful local Lebanese restaurant. You'll be pleased to know I've tried it before any of you, just to make sure it's all okay, and it is stunning. And the social development and progress of Lebanese children, refugee children, the Palestinians, the refugee Syrians over the years, of course, and the native Lebanese, to improve their outcomes and their retention in Lebanese schools. Working with Caritas Lebanon. Those of you who don't know, Caritas is one of the greatest organisations in the world today. Part of the Catholic Church, obviously. Its work in this country, in Europe and Africa, and in this case throughout Lebanon, seeks to support children who need our support. The focus particularly for the Trust is the after-school programme. Caritas Lebanon call it ASP, and obviously we have fidelity to the terminology. We call it the ASP programme. It's after-school provision. Something that we've been very good at in Hartland schools over the years. And of course, Newman fits into that all. We're in many ways a conduit between the Trust, Caritas Lebanon, and our aims and objectives. So a bit more detail. I won't read this necessarily, but you can see it for yourself. Educational attainment, practical support, helping refugee children, really noble aims, and things that we can do here to make a difference. After school provision, focusing on children with special needs, all those questions of homework, and the difficulties in the home lives. So throughout the year, what we do after school, the support, the encouragement, the academic development, the pastoral care, all the things that really make a difference in parts of the world. I told you earlier on, teachers at this school and in grade schools make a difference on a daily basis, and we seek to emulate and support our colleagues in Beirut to do just the same. More practically, that's a map of Beirut there. This is the plan. We seek to work in these two parts of Beirut, and forgive me for this, those of you who speak Arabic. In this centre, I want you to say it, and in this centre, these parts of Beirut are our areas of focus. And that's a little bit about them there, the multicultural areas. Lots of people in those parts of Beirut who come from vulnerable groups, refugee groups in particular, where poverty, housing poverty, material poverty is endemic. It's endemic. Okay, a bit more about the information there. And this is what we're trying to do. Children in Beirut have a right to a quality of life just as much as our own children do. And I mean our own children who belong to us, who we teach. Leisure and artistic activities. Things that we take for granted in London and in the West. That's what we hope to do. And of course, tutoring and academic development are core to the programme. So, you'll hear more about this in a moment or two from Christoph himself. That's the plan, really. That's what we want to do. The budget is $92,000. We aim to cover 80% of that over the 3-year period. So we're looking to raise $440,000. And the rest of that self-explanatory. And that's why, you know why. Your money, our skill, your support will make a difference. And that's us. I don't want to embarrass people necessarily. Yeah, Professor Ian Linden is following us on our live stream now, and Professor Linden, it's a pleasure to work with you. Cristoforo will speak shortly about money. Melanie, could you say hi? That's Melanie Gibson there, obviously myself. Florence is there, wonderful, and Pietro, and Bill is there at the back there. And I know Bill is travel difficulties.
He can't make it.
So okay, that's fine. So we've met fortnightly for the past 18 months or so, mainly on Zoom for obvious reasons, trying to develop and win support, financial backing, emotional and practical backing for this program. So that's us. What I'm going to do now is shift over to this video. So we recorded this a couple of weeks ago, myself and Professor Linden, with Father Michel Aboud in Beirut. Michel, who previously been part of Caritas, talking to us about some of the challenges that he, as an educator, as a social reformer, and of course as a man of deep religious conviction, is living through on a daily basis. So it's recording via Zoom. It's not totally wonderful reception and quality, but you certainly get the gist of it. So it is about 20 minutes long. I think it's really worth listening to and giving some focus to get an idea of understanding why we are so driven to make a difference to the children of this city.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Constantian Charitable Trust evening. This evening you're going to be watching a video with Professor Ian Linden and Father Michel Aboud, speaking from Lebanon. We recorded it a few weeks ago. I'm now going to hand over to Ian Linden, who will begin the questions and Father will respond accordingly. Thank you, Ian.
Hello everyone, and on your behalf and on behalf of the Constantian Charitable Trust, I'd like to give a very big welcome to Father Aboud in Beirut. And I think we both must have said prayers for the software because it seems to be working, the connection down the line. So let's hope it stays that way during our conversation. I'll shortly be talking to Father Aboud, but I want to just very briefly introduce him. Father Aboud went to a Carmelite school in Kobayat and then moved on eventually to become superior of the Carmelite monastery there. And it was 1.5 years ago that the bishops in Lebanon asked him to take the role of president of Caritas Lebanon. I think you can imagine just how difficult that was at that moment. Lebanon had been thrown into a terrible economic crisis. There was a vacuum politically. Then there was the terrible August explosion in the port in Beirut. And of course, then COVID was getting very serious in the country. I think that it's hard to imagine a more demanding moment to take over the role of leadership in what is the biggest, one of the most important of the non-governmental organizations in Lebanon. Father Aboud, you'll be talking to an audience of distinguished guests, including 1 or 2 diplomats, but I think most important for what we're doing, the number of representatives from different London schools, which, like almost preeminently Cardinal, the Newman Catholic College, has got a number of students from Syria and the Middle East. So the links are really quite strong. And there'll be many, if you need to speak Arabic, there'll be 1 or 2 students in the class who are ready to understand. But Danny and I don't. So first of all, may I start with the first question? And it's essentially this: given the magnitude and the extent of the crisis, what would you pick out? What would you say in particular were the most difficult aspects of it? And if you're willing to, for you personally, but also for you and your role in Caritas. Over to you.
Thank you for this interview. Good day for everyone, and God bless you indeed. At first, I would like to start by thanking you, all on behalf of Caritas Lebanon and on behalf of all the Lebanese people, for your time and your efforts. First, if you allow me, if you can introduce Caritas, which is the common official socio-pastoral arm of the local Catholic Church in services of the poor and the promotion of love, charity, and charity. And if you allow, before I start my interview, I would like to explain to you the crisis, the many challenges facing Lebanon, starting by an interesting story which a school teacher once shared with me 5 months ago. Is the starting of the crisis, economic crisis in Lebanon. One time, this teacher was in school, and during the recess, he saw through his office window 2 children fighting. He rushed towards them, trying to stop the fight. He noticed that one of them had been holding a sandwich and dropped it in the floor during the fight. He picked up the sandwich and saw that it was only bread without anything inside of it. He started searching for the cheese on the floor, thinking that it must have fallen on the floor, but he couldn't find anything. He was surprised and asked the student what was inside the sandwich. The children at first refused to answer, but when the teacher insisted, the boy told him, "I had nothing inside my sandwich. It was empty." After this, the teacher discovered that this boy comes from a big family, and the salary of the father was not enough, and they can only afford plain bread. For sure, in Caritas, we decided to react promptly, and we found many more similar cases after. I am sharing with you this story as a summary of the effect of the crisis on the society in many ways, especially in the economic and education level in Lebanon. What this? Now, let me start by explaining the economic side of the crisis. Lebanon has been in a severe social, political, and economic crisis for 2 years, which got worse by the political confusion, the pandemic, and the Beirut blast. The financial crisis is severely affected everyone, small visitors, the labor force, and small business. The situation has also impacted public basic services such as electricity, water, education, hospitalization, and end of the service of national social security. The Lebanese currency has lost up to 90% of its value, leading to a huge increase in the prices of all basic needs. Imagine someone has his salary about $1,000. During 2 months, 3 months, it became $50. People don't have any more access to foreign currencies except for the fresh dollar accounts, allowing depositors to draw dollar sent from abroad under specific conditions. The crisis also is hitting the fuel market, leading to a shortage of imported fuel, forcing hospitals, bakeries, and business to scale back or shut down. Even regular people are waiting in huge lines to get some gas for their cars. If you see the image of the line for 2-3 kilometers, cars waiting to get fuel. In addition, the crisis also is affecting the basic medicines and medical supplies, making it extremely difficult for everyone to obtain essential medical care. For example, the American University of Beirut Medical Center previously warned that if it did not receive a shipment of diesel fuel to keep its generators running, 40 other patients and 15 children living on respirators will die immediately, and another 180 others who are receiving dialysis treatment will die within a matter of days. Shortage of food and other goods are affecting people's access to good nutrition. Moreover, extended electricity cuts are causing food poisoning. The majority of the families would soon find it very difficult to put food on the table, according to a report issued by the Crisis Observatory at the American University of Beirut. The huge inflation has forced middle-class families to now seek food, aimed as they are spending 5 times the minimum wage of food alone. No.
Brother, you brought to life for us the words that you said, I think in another interview, we have lost everything except our faith. And I think you really have brought that to life for us, and thank you. May I move on to just ask, can you give us a little sketch about what are what is Caritas's main work? Because I'd also like to ask you, we all share, and in the room this evening, there are many people share your commitment to education, but it's obvious that there are huge pressures on Caritas, huge pressures on humanitarian aid, which would neglect education completely, and in a way neglect the future and the hopes of all the families whose children are deprived of education. So could you give us your thinking on that dilemma, that competing demands between different aspects of Caritas's work?
Yes. Caritas, and as I told you before, Caritas is present always in Lebanon, and poverty is a barrier to children's access to education, as many families cannot afford learning equipment or have to rely on children to provide an income. Many children in Lebanon have been out of schools since October 2019, when protesters started on affected many parts of the country, and since then, Caritas Lebanon has been trying really hard to launch an international appeal to ensure schools keep their doors open for the upcoming scholastic year. The social and economic crisis in Lebanon is turning into an education catastrophe, with children facing a real risk of never returning to school. Since the pandemic, more than 1.2 million children in Lebanon have been out of school. Over the past COVID-19 year, Lebanese children have received an estimated maximum of
11 weeks of education only, with an even lower number of weeks in school for Syrian children. 55% of Lebanese families are now living in poverty, with even higher rates among Palestinians, 70%, and Syrian refugees, 90%, adding to that teachers are facing delays in salary payment, which is making the situation even worse.
This must make remedial education, the after-school program, even more important when the schools start again, because the demand for catching up is now absolutely essential, I imagine.
Yes. About 80% of Catholic schools, which provide education to approximately 2/3 of students in Lebanon's private institutions, will close for the next school year due to the lack of government aid. Almost 21% of the Christian schools are semi-private, headed by the government. So it means that the poor people used to have access to good education without paying expensive fees. Thus, almost 15% of the children in Lebanon are studying in semi-private schools that are mainly Christian. The semi-private schools also are not receiving any help from the government since 2015. As a result, the semi-private schools, who are welcoming mostly poor students, become also now a financial burden to the churches and the Catholic congregations who are trying to handle all the financial costs and who were forced to shut down a big number of semi-private schools and even some private ones. In a region marked by inequality, violence, and under-education, Lebanon was always a case apart because of its education system to contribute to a good social level where different religious communities are living together in peace, and a reduction of extremism and an access for everyone, regardless the social origin of the religion, to great education. Today, the education sector in Lebanon is destined to collapse if we don't take any quick actions. Lebanon will lose its role as a beacon of education, culture, and diversity. As you said in the beginning of the interview, I was in school, what we are together, Muslim and Christian. And we had the same book, the same teacher. The Muslim prayed with us. No, my Muslim friend were with me in the school. So when we speak about the Catholic school in Lebanon, and we should save, then we save the identity of Lebanon, as St. John Paul II, the Pope, said, Lebanon, a message for all the world. Because in other countries, the religions, because the war. In Lebanon, we are living together. But we discovered that during all our history, we had many wars, civil wars. But now we decided to gather live together and do not let anyone enter and destroy our peaceful life.
And that example, inshallah, will be an example for the future for the Middle East.
Yeah.
I don't want to hog the questions, as we say. I'd like to have Danny, who's got two short questions for you. Danny.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Father Aboud, once again. I have two questions, Father. My first question, very simple. What are the parents and children of Beirut that you meet on a daily basis? What are they saying about the lack of education for their families, for their children? What's the word on the street about this situation that you described so well?
Look, depend of every parent. Many parents, despite of their poorest life, decided to give education for their students. And when they can't pay the tuition or anything for the public, they come to us as church, as Caritas and others. Okay, the education before the bread. But when we see someone in the street, someone is from the refugees, from the Palestinian, but and small and little number of Lebanese people in the street. Okay, we refuse all Caritas and other associations. When we see someone in the street, immediately we go to him. And while we are in the street, we sometimes we decide to help him. But between parentheses, some parents depend on their culture. They don't want that their children go to the school. But okay, their children to school before the break, and we are ready for this. As you know, we have the public university, and the public university the tuition is very small. When at Caritas we see someone out of the university because he can pay this subscription, immediately we act. And I give you many examples about this. I am saying on behalf of the name, two doctors. I was from Akka, north of Lebanon. After the school, I discovered that a very good girl decided to remain out of school and university during 1 year or 2 years, to work, to provide money, and to pay for his university. When I decided, I told her no. Realize this. Okay, this is our consolation, because when we play and plan, we don't see immediately. We see the fruit after, but we sing in the name of God. We are the hand of God, and God acts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful response to my question, and thank God for Caritas and the work you're doing in Lebanon and throughout the world. My second question, Father, is in London, what can we do more to support you with the work that you are doing every single day to help the poor and the children of your country?
Yes. We have poor, but we have families poor. One person can't help all the families, but one family can help another family. Two families can help one family, three families. But what we decided to do a project to adopt another family. Yeah, meaning is that you can say, look, I pay every month $50 for this family. And another family, so like this, 1, 2, 3 families can adopt a family. And like this, we can arrive to big sum. So one point we can arrive. So what we have this project. We started, and our project called Family to Family, Sister Family. Now we have a project for education trust. We decided because education was last time we started to provide for kids, and we have line of the people waiting to take food kits. Between the line, we saw many teachers. Our teacher is the line to get food kits. We don't accept. What we discovered? We discovered they are working in school, private school, and they don't take the salary 3 or 4 months ago. Why? Because the families can't pay the tuition, so the school can't pay the salary of the teacher, and the teacher became needed people and comes to Caritas ask this.
You've raised an idea really, which I think we could follow. Instead of family to family, I think we're thinking school to school. That network of schools to support the remedial education and when things restart. I mean, it's the same principle. It's exactly the same principle that you raised. I'm going to have to draw this to a close because I can imagine what your schedule is like today, and and many of the things you said, I'm sure, will have rung a bell with people working in schools in Britain. Even sometimes, lack of food. I'm sad to say we have our own food banks. You probably know that. So to end, may I just simply say that we will work with you to the very best of our ability in the charitable trust, and we will keep Lebanon, Caritas Lebanon, and the work that you're doing in our prayers. So thank you for your time, and thank you for really opening up and making us understand so much better the needs that face you and what really should be facing the world. Thank you, Father, and good night to you.
Good night.
Thank you, Father. God bless you. Thank you.
Before I introduce Christopher and obviously about how we're going to take this project forward, are there any questions or contributions or anything that people want to know from the floor? People, simple questions, complex questions, anything at all you want to ask?
How long do you anticipate this project is going to move for?
How long do we anticipate this going on for? It's a really good question. Maybe I should talk to my colleagues first. I think we're looking at a long-term project here. A long-term project. We began this whole thing talking about providing after-school activities for children in Beirut. And what's beginning to emerge is the possibility of schools talking to schools when Lebanon gets back going again. I think there'll be further developments in the months and years to come. So from our point of view, and I hope I can speak for the trustees as a collective, I think we're talking about years and years and years. The problems in Lebanon and Beirut are profound, and they'll need our long-term commitment. So this is a long-term commitment from us, and hopefully from the wider community here as well. Some sort of question for you. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, my friend. You still not okay? Take a mic.
How many charities are there in around the
What exact number or an approximate number? I don't know. Thousands. And one of the challenges we have as teachers, there are so many things in the world that need to be done. We all in this country and abroad. We feel as people who work in London, the experience that schools and teachers have worked on over the years to provide for those in need, make us very equipped to provide a need in this city, in Beirut. That's not to say, of course, that there aren't great needs in other parts of the world, because we know that to be the case. But we can only do what we can do with our own capacity. And we think if we can solve this problem, or help solve this problem, maybe it will inspire others who are younger, maybe more energetic, to solve problems elsewhere in the world. Who's that? Do you have your hand over there? No, you good? Anybody else? So, Bishop John Hayes.
Thank you. It's probably a simple question that Father mentioned the Palestinian refugees and the Syrian refugees. I mean, how many refugees are there in the Lebanon? And I know this is two particular projects, but just trying to get a sense of the magnitude of the problem.
Can I ask one of my colleagues and the trustees to answer the question?
I haven't got the exact number off the top of my head, but it's millions. 1.5 million.
1.5 million refugees from Syria, and estimated 500,000 to 600,000 Palestinians, all condensed in a relatively small landmass, where the Lebanese population is 5 million.
And the rest are refugees.
Yes. So it's a huge proportion.
So the need is quite clearly enormous. Thank you so much, Bishop John. Any other questions? Yes, Alison there. Thank you.
It was just to ask if Caritas West, Caritas Lebanon have the people to run the project. Have they got those kind of resources? And just picking up on what was said, to make sure that those people are able to be paid for the work that they're doing. Because you did mention about teachers not being paid when they're working in the schools. So just making sure that the costs actually cover all of the costs, and it's not reliant too much on it as well.
I would answer that question. There's another trustee over here.
I'm actually a consultant to the trust, and was brought in to look specifically at that question. Obviously, COVID has changed all our lives. In Lebanon, perhaps more extremely than in other places, and that's certainly one of our priorities, is ensuring that the people we work with at Caritas, who are already there and have experienced the ASP program before, are in the right kind of frame, both organisationally and personally, to be able to kind of restart it at this stage. They work for Caritas, which is a well-funded, well-run international organisation, which is hugely advantageous from someone working in Lebanon. You'll have noticed our numbers are in dollars here as well. Partly that's also a reflection of the currency situation in the country. As regards the teachers, I suppose that also comes from what Father Aboud said, to ensure that they don't have to queue with those in need, that they don't fall into that bracket. The way that ASP was structured in a pre-COVID time, that the teachers who participated in the ASB actually came from the school system itself. They weren't separate, so they were teaching as their day jobs, and their effectively additional income came from the SP. We do have a presentation which will need to be updated to a certain extent, much more extensive than this, which will include slightly more details on kind of the budget breakdown of that annual budget and over the 3 years. But staff costs is a huge part of that.
Thank you for that. Mr. Could you just come up to Musa here, who's just written a short piece about his experience via Syria and obviously into London and now at this school.
Hello there, my name is Musa Al-Kawar and I'm from Syria. I was 4 when the civil war started in Syria and I escaped in 2013, 2 years into the war. When I first came, I was labelled a refugee. Refugees are mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, children, with the same hopes and ambitions as us, except that a twist of fate has bound their lives to a global refugee crisis on an unprecedented scale. To be called a refugee is the opposite of an insult. It is a badge of strength, courage, and integrity. Like many refugees, me and my family didn't know anything and didn't know how to speak the language. Then we met Miss Amanda, the past refugee coordinator at the school, and she introduced us to Mr. Koyo and Miss Grace, who have only ever been helpful and seeking the best for everyone. And when I came to this school, I felt like I was at home, almost as this is my sanctuary, somewhere where I feel safe. With their help, I became more confident in myself to speak out. I had courage for the first time. I wanted people to know about my story and to remember that there are people, mothers, fathers, kids going through what I went through, and we can help each other out and change what's happening in places such as Syria, Palestine, Lebanon, Afghanistan, and much more if we put our mind to it. Abraham Lincoln once said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Incredibly powerful note. I'm going to ask Mr. Ford to come up here and say a few words about our fundraising request.
My name is I'm the treasurer of the Constantian Charitable Trust. I'd like to just, before I get into the actual figures, maybe cover a couple of points that were raised. Yes, we're in there for the long haul. There's no question about that. The worse the crisis, the longer it lasts. But our fundraising horizon for this project needs to be precise and it needs to be sustainable, which was one of the questions that was asked. And my son, he doesn't just have the same name as me, he's actually smarter than I am, which is why he's a consultant. But the reality is it needs to be sustainable. So we have a 3-year horizon, which is this fairly standard funding period to ensure that these centres are properly funded. Okay. The second point I wanted to make, it's not just about money. We as a trust are quite active and quite creative. And one of the things that will amuse, I think, all of you, these young boys who are there, who obviously like soccer. I'm Italian, we love soccer, as you can imagine. I noticed that a lot of the kids were wearing football shirts in the centres when I went to visit them in Beirut. They were pretty threadbare. Obviously, some of the girls were wearing the football shirts, but most of them, much to my disappointment as an Italian, were wearing Barcelona, Barca football shirts. I didn't take that as an insult. So we wrote to the president of Barcelona Football Club. And we said, this is the story, and we weren't asking for money. We were trying to see whether they could send some of their surplus shirts because they changed their strip, as you can well imagine. Maybe they won't now because they started losing, and on top of that, they don't have as much money. But the reality is they normally change their strip. They responded in an interesting way. They wanted to ensure that girls got what boys got. So they didn't send shirts And out of the blue, one day, this big box arrived, and it was full of posters, badges, pens, all sorts of things with explicit instructions. It's not just for the boys. So this is to say we're quite active, not just in issues to do with money, which is obvious. In terms of the cash, it's difficult to do a budget, a precise budget, in a situation where you have a collapsing currency and you have skyrocketing inflation, okay? Because, you know, if you assume that if you had £100 in your pocket a year ago, you went out to spend that £100 and it only gave you £5, you can imagine what it's like doing a budget. On the other side, the money we raise is obviously in pounds or dollars, so it can go further. So what we've done is we've assumed the same budget we did before, that what the currency has done in terms of allowing the money we raise to go further compensates the increase in the costs, okay, due to inflation. One last comment about the teachers, which my son touched on, and it's extremely important. One of the attractions of the centres to the local teachers who refer the kids to the centres, they actually come from the schools themselves, is that they increase their salaries, their take-home pay by about 30%. And it's paid every month, whereas the public salaries can be delayed for months on end. So there is an incentive, and this matters, that the teachers have a reason, aside from any other reason, to teach in these centres. Now the costs themselves we've estimated, when we say forward, let's convert it into sterling. Okay, it's a round figure of £350,000. What does £350,000 buy? If we do better, then we will work with our partners to expand the program. Okay, that's very important. Now, it translates to about 350,000. 350,000 guarantees the sustainability of 2 centres with 200 kids for 3 years. That's a lot. It also gives the trust, the credibility. This matters. The lady from Caritas Westminster will confirm this. Anybody who works for charity will confirm this. You're only as credible as your ability not only to have ideas, not only to put in work, but also to how much money you can actually put in. So we feel that if we can consolidate the position of 2 of these centres, it will give us influence in our discussions with our partners to raise the game. Now the reality is that it's not just about refugees. It's also to do with Lebanese children. These centres are 50-50 Lebanese, Syrian refugees. I'd like to conclude by talking about girls, okay? Because this matters to the trust. We would like to feel that the girls are as important, if not more so, than the boys. They have to work harder. So the trust is committed in this respect to work with our partners. I can assure you that Caritas Lebanon feel the same as we do. So there you go. We're trying to raise £350,000, 200 kids, 2 centres, sustainable for 3 years. That is the amount that will finance the centres for 3 years. That's the difference.
Just before we wrap up the proceedings for this evening, and before we introduce you to the lovely Lebanese food, I'll give you one of these as you depart this evening. There's a barcode on it. The barcode, obviously, you take a photograph of it, it'll take you straight to your phone, and there is an opportunity, mechanism for you to donate money via this barcode. I've tried it myself today. It's totally secure. You can do it via PayPal or straight from your card, but please take it with you. Spread the word, give them out to your friends, family, and work colleagues. Finally, it's a raffle. It wouldn't be a charity evening without a raffle. There are 3 prizes here, 3 gifts, graciously donated by us, and no names are on them, so I'm just going to pull names up myself. I hope you trust me. If it's a trustee, we have to put the names back in the hat. So the third prize, which as you can see, is for some very beautifully wrapped. The third prize goes to Afaf El-Alam. Afaf El-Alam. Brilliant. Come up here again, Afaf. Well done. Okay, now we move on to the second prize. I can feel the tension in the room rising. Now, this is a £40, so there's two £20 restaurant vouchers here for Comptoir Lebanese, a Lebanese restaurant canteen, which is a local area. Apparently, this Grace tells me, it's won the prize for the best Lebanese restaurant in London for the last 2 years running. And that's the second prize. And the first prize is actually £60. So, second prize, you can go on the way home this evening, goes to Mr. Connors. Well done, Mr. Connors. Thank you. If you take your girlfriend out for dinner tonight, we're going to tell her that you won it in the raffle, okay? And the first prize, which is £60 for the same restaurant, local Lebanese restaurant. Okay. I can't do another new teacher, I'm sorry. I can't do another new teacher. It's not fair. I appreciate your support and I value your compassion. Brian Grady from Brent Council. Is Brian here?
He's had to leave. He's been
Well, nobody tell him then. He's not going to get this. This one's going definitely. Please bring him here. Don't tell him, Mr. Grady, okay? Okay. That was me, sorry. Right, this is definite. Staff, council member, local politician. You booked Mr. Hughes. I really couldn't. Mr. Hughes is head of our readers, worked in this school for many, many years, and I simply couldn't say him down. So, colleagues, friends, pupils, thank you so much for coming this evening. Obviously, we're here for a very, very important cause to try to improve the lives of impoverished children. Thank you for your time. Please partake of some quite delightful Lebanese food, mingle and enjoy each other's company. So thank you very much for coming. Cheers.